episode of Force to Win podcast, man. It's your boy Frank Nino. Got my homegirl Leticia J. Today, man, we got a real special episode for you, man. You know what I mean? Shout out to my guy Sean Ellis. You know what I'm saying? Mr. Trial 4. Got my guy Steve Pina in the building. You know what I mean? A lot of information is going to be talked about today. I'm just going to sit here and listen, man. You know, I ain't really going to be doing too many question asking, man. I'm trying to absorb the info. You know what I'm saying? See what's going on out here, man. You know. So, let's start off with you, man. So, let's talk about your humble beginnings, man. Before
everything, huh? Yeah. So, I grew up in Rosendale, in the projects.
Was it? So, what part of Boston is that? In Boston, like?
That's in Boston, yeah.
All right.
That's in Boston, but it's kind of like on a. It's in Boston, but it is in the hood. It wouldn't be considered the hood of Boston, right? It was a project in Boston, but not part of Dorchester, Roxbury, or Mattapan. It was like on the out. It would be considered the outskirts.
Mm-hmm.
Same. But I grew up in the projects in Rosendale, and then when I was about 10, my older brother died. And then my mom moved us from Rosendale to Dorchester, and so I spent the rest of my free life growing up in Dorchester.
Okay. How about you?
Me, man, I grew up right down the street, 1850. When I was younger, my mother lived on Devon Street. Ended up moving.
So this is Roxbury we're talking about.
Yeah, this is Roxbury.
People gotta understand what's going on when they watch,
This Roxbury, Boston. We call it like the border of Roxbury South End.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up right down the street, 1850, man. That was my humble beginnings. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so fast forward to what transpires in your life. You get into some trouble. Was you ever in trouble before you got sentenced or before you got accused of a crime?
So I don't want to make a general statement, but I think that the culture and atmosphere in Boston at that time, you had a lot of young black and brown kids that was being preyed on, right? That was the era of mass incarceration. So to answer your question, yes, you know what I'm saying, I had experiences with law enforcement prior to going to prison for life, right? But it was one of the things whereas who didn't have a lot of experiences, you know what I'm saying, with law enforcement prior. Like that was the era of patent frisk, right? Where
so this is 93, 94,
90, 80, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. I got locked up in 93, but yeah.
And I gotta say, I grew up pretty much, my mother was a Jehovah's Witness, and I think my first encounter with the law was a stolen car. And I remember being locked up with a friend of mine and my mother coming down to B2, and my boy's mother bailed him out. My mother came and looked in the cell, and she's like, yep, I'll see you tomorrow, and left me there that night. That was my first arrest, first experience with dealing with the law. And then, like Sean said, man, just growing up and seeing guys in the neighborhood having things that I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
I probably came out the house 16, 17,
mm-hmm.
and just, was in the streets, you know what I'm saying, hustling. So that was mine.
It's funny that you say that your first experience with the police was with a burglary situation, because mine's too, right, was a situation where there were some kids that was around a car that was already stolen, right, just inquisitive, and then the police pulled up and then everybody ran and they gave chase, and then everyone ended up getting arrested for a stolen car, which we didn't even steal. I'm saying, so
Accusing people.
I was gonna make a joke, but I'm gonna leave that alone.
I like to move once in a while. You know.
Don't blame on my speech.
No, I was gonna say that. I was gonna say you the one that got caught because you were slow. But I'm just messing with you.
We actually all got him.
Oh yeah.
We was all young, like I'm saying, we was kids. But my point is it speaks to the fact that we was criminalized
Automatically, yeah.
from the very beginning. It's like we didn't even do nothing wrong. Like we didn't steal the car. We wasn't stealing anything out of the car. The police came and we just ran just because.
Yeah.
Because that's what we taught to do. That's what we used to do. Police come, opposite way.
Yeah.
They gotta go.
Right. And so.
In their eyes, that means guilty. Let's catch them.
Right. Catch them, and then they don't want to hear anything. Then you in the system, and then you're going through it.
So, to the crime that you're accused of, for those that don't know, what was it that you were accused of doing?
So I was accused of the murder of a Boston police officer by the name of John Mulligan. Me and my co-defendant was accused of murder, robbery, and possession of firearms.
So this night, what happened? You went to what was it? Walgreens?
Walgreens, yeah.
Walgreens, and you just happened to be, you were just getting some diapers or something?
Yeah, so I was, around that time, me and my mom had some issues, right? So, she had put me out, and I was staying with my cousin. And early that morning, like on my way out, she asked, on my way home to grab some diapers. So I went to the store, I brought diapers, and I'm left. And then 3 days later, two of my cousins were murdered. And so the police wanted to speak to me. They told my mom about the murder of my cousins. So I grew up in a time where we didn't talk to police, right? But mom was like, just talk to them. And plus I wanted to know what happened to my cousins too. So I agreed to talk to them. And I was being. It started out as talking, as a questioning, right? But what it really was an interrogation, and I ended up being interrogated for about 6 or 7 hours. And I maintained what I said from start to finish, right? But halfway through, a detective by the name of John Mulligan came in the room and accused me of the murder of John Mulligan. And which since that time all the way till now, I've maintained my innocence, but that didn't matter throughout the process.
So you were brought in to talk about the murders of your cousins.
Of my cousin Celine Tracy.
And then midway through the interview, they decided to be like, "Hey, no."
Yeah. So once I acknowledged to being present, thereby in Pampers, that's when the whole tone of that conversation shift to not no longer wanting to inquire about my cousins to, oh, you was there, you killed the cop.
So basically, you feel like these interrogators, they have tactics to make you say things that you don't really say. They have different ways of swaying you, different ways of talking and interpreting things. And so you was there, but you didn't do, and then they trip you. They try to trip you into saying certain things to, get you.
Yeah. So there is, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but there was a bill at the State House that kind of speaks to interrogation tactics by law enforcement, right? Up until now, it's legal for law enforcement to lie to a minor that's being interrogated.
To lie to him?
To lie. To a minor, right?
That's legal. That's a legal tactic.
Legal tactic, right? And it's a bill that's in front of the Massachusetts State House to try to get them to prevent them from doing that. That's not something that happened in my situation. They didn't accuse me of lying. They just came and said you did this. Right, but as part of tactics, you were speaking about tactics and things that they do during interrogation processes. and that's definitely a tactic that they use.
So when you say lie, so like, oh, you were there and I have a witness, but they really don't have a witness.
Right. So yeah, we have you on tape doing X, Y, and Z, but there's really no tape of X, Y, and Z, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like manipulation of mind games that they play on the majority of young people.
And one of the things too that they don't do is most times they don't record these interviews. So now when you see the police report and you're reading it, they're writing what they want to write. He said X, Y, Z, or this witness said this, and you're saying, I didn't say that, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's either, the truth is the truth. Like he said, his story didn't change from this to this, and it never changed from the arrest to the coming home. You know what I'm saying? From day one, it's I'm innocent. You know what I mean? So when you stand on that truth, there's nothing that they can say that's gonna, with most people, waive you from that. But like he said, he was interrogated for hours, and that can beat some people down to a point where they're just like, yo, I just want this to be over.
Look at what happened with the Central Park Five.
How about you just bring that up?
See what I'm saying?
You know what I mean? It's so when we start dealing with like wrongful convictions and what goes into it, right? There are five things that have been identified that goes into wrongful convictions, right? To making up wrongful convictions. There is misidentification. There is junk science. There is official misconduct, whether it's police misconduct, whether it's misconduct within the DA's office. There is coerced confessions. I'm gonna say it again. What we're talking about is coerced confessions, right? And then there is like inadequate representation, right? But when you deal with coerced confessions, the police have tactics that they utilize, right? To try to to elicit coerced confessions, and that's one of the hardest wrongful convictions to overturn, right? Because the court presumes that you're gonna tell the truth about yourself, right? They don't take into consideration the tactics that's used, the pressure, the manipulation, the coercion to try to get you to fit into a narrative that the police will want to have.
That's the definition of coercion.
Yeah, especially for a minor whose brain isn't completely developed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And all they're thinking is, because they'll say, well, just tell us what happened, you can go home.
Right.
And that's what they did with the Central Five. You know what I'm saying? They say, yo, just tell us what happened, you can go home. And they're like, okay, well, and it was, this is what happened, yeah. And they're writing down. But, they're writing what they want to write.
Yeah, and it's not recorded.
Right.
No.
So that's the loophole they,
Or it's recorded. It's not recorded in the beginning, but then when they get you to say now the camera comes on. Now you're already 8 hours into the interrogation, but the camera's only recording the last hour of it. Well, what happened to the other 7 hours? What was going on then? See what I'm saying?
Let me ask you a question, if I can. Like, did you notice that? Because one of the things about me, right? I had 3 trials before my conviction. Steve had 2 trials before his conviction, right? The norm is you either go to trial one time and you're found guilty or you're acquitted. But we both had multiple trials, right? So, like, when the police was interviewing, right, the witnesses in your case as they were in mine, I know in my case, when I listened to those recordings, like, it appeared that there was some kind of conversation that took place off, like when it wasn't being recorded, right?
Yeah.
Did that happen in your situation?
None of the witnesses that they used had recordings, but through statements that they wrote, you could tell that there was a dialogue prior to, just by, you know what I'm saying, the way it's articulated. There was something, and what people don't realize is sometimes the police will go and get you. They'll go and get the witness from somewhere. And in that car, there's conversation.
Yeah. So you mean go get the witness? Or does like go get anybody?
They'll go, no. They'll like if Jimmy's a witness in the case.
So let's not make up something. In my case, and then I'm gonna pivot back.
Okay.
In my case, right, there was a detective by the name of Kenneth Sarah, and there was a witness by the name of Rosa Sanchez, right? Kenneth Sarah, along with his partner Walter Robinson, went and picked up Rosa Sanchez and her husband and transported them to the homicide unit, right, in order to view photographs. On the way of that ride, there was conversations. I think that's what you talking about.
And you don't know what those conversations are.
Yeah.
You don't know if they're showing them, yo, this is the guy you're gonna pick out when you get there, or this is this, that, and the other. In my case, they went and got a woman who, a few months after the homicide looked at pictures, couldn't identify me, and then 7 months later they go pull her from a crack house, bring her to the police station. She goes and says, oh, that's him from the same photo array she couldn't ID me in. And what do after that? They bring her back to the crack house. So it's like, what conversation was said? You look, what was, you know what I'm saying? Because, you looked at a photo that he was in before. I don't know if this is the conversation that went on, but it's possible. So now when you get there, you automatically come in and say, that's him. So how do I know they don't have the photo array in the car giving her a ride over saying, yo, when you get in there, this is who you're going to point at? You see what I'm saying? So it's like...
So they got those tactics too.
Yeah, and do
things they don't need to do.
And...
to sway witnesses to go a certain way.
This is one of the things. So even if a witness identifies you, and they realize later that they made the mistake, because they're so invested and because the police have them invested in that, they'll just keep quiet. And they won't come and say, I think I made a mistake. It's very, very rare. Because the police are going to say, no, that was the right, because once you point, oh yeah, you got the right guy. So now even if they have that doubt, they say, well, the police said this was the right dude. And now they're invested. They don't want to look bad in front of the police.
Yeah.
So they stick to their story.
Even though it was wrong.
What was it that you did? What was it that you got opposed of?
They accused me of killing a young man in Mission Hill that had robbed somebody earlier. And it was somehow they said my name came up, which, years later we found out a different story. But my picture ended up in a photo array, even though they said I wasn't a suspect. And, at the time, I was around Mission Hill, you know what I'm saying? I was, but at that time of the homicide, I wasn't there. So I had heard about it like the next day, somebody had got killed down there.
Yeah, but you wasn't there.
No, I wasn't there. And it was like, that happened in February. The warrant for my arrest came in September, around the time that the Mulligan thing was. You know what I mean? So
go ahead.
February to September. So all that time.
I was all that time I was in and out of Mission Hill at that time. Just like, I went to a party. The murder happened on a Friday. I was at a party down the street Saturday night at a house party, and it was like, yo, and people were talking about it, but I'm like, all right, I paid me no mind, you know what I'm saying? And then, I had moved to Atlanta, had a baby on the way, went out there, started working for my uncle, and got a phone call that I was wanted for murder, and I'm like, well, I didn't kill anybody, and the only homicide that when they said it, that clicked. There was a young man named Jimmy Clark who was murdered on Harridan Way. And when they said murder on, in Mission Hill, that's what I thought of. And I was like, well, they got the lady that did that. So I'm saying, okay, my 1,800-mile drive back from Atlanta, I'm saying to my lady at the time, my fiance, who was pregnant 8 months, I'm like, yo, when we get there, they're going to see it wasn't me. They made a mistake. You know what I'm saying? There's a mistake. Once they see me, they're going to realize, like, oh, we made a mistake. You're not the... And that wasn't the case.
Once they want somebody, they want to.
And I read in the Boston Phoenix years later that Massachusetts has the worst homicide unit in the country because they do not solve homicides, they prove them. So like him, where he said, I was at Walmart buying diapers, that was all they needed. That placed him there.
Yep.
We're going to prove he did this.
Yeah.
By all means necessary.
We're going to make the narrative, make them fit that narrative.
And when someone said, oh yeah, the name Steve came up, oh, we're going to prove Steve Pina was involved with this homicide. And that's what they did.
And when you police in that way, right, it's not about the crime, it's about the person. And when it's about the person, anybody fits. That's the part that you gotta understand. Like, I could be you. I could be your brother. I could be you. Right? Because anybody fits. Because it's I'm gonna make that fit on you. It's not about what you did, it's about what happened and me making it fit on you.
And you know, and I try to tell people, man, and I need people to understand that wrongful conviction exists. It's real.
Oh yeah.
And people think that it's isolated. Oh nah, that doesn't really happen. Nah, this excuse my French, this shit is real. It's realer than a motherfucker.
You gotta keep in mind that it's like before Sean Ellis became an exoneree, Sean Ellis was referred to as a cop killer. I wasn't referred to as an exoneree. I wasn't considered an exoneree. I had to fight to prove that I didn't commit this crime. So there was a period between 1993 and 2021, right, where I was considered a cop killer. This exoneree piece came after. I have more time being considered a cop killer than I do being exoneree. Just like at one time, I had more time in prison, right, than I did alive and on the street. So we got to be careful to kind of understand that the label exoneree came after. When we're in prison, we're treated the same.
Yeah, that's it. Doesn't matter. The label's on you. They just treat you like it is what it is.
It is what it is, and even worse, because they consider you a cop killer.
Exactly.
Like they just treat you like you're like nothing.
Exactly. One of the things that I've been told is that nobody wanted the bid that I had, and the bid being this sentence, meaning nobody wanted to be doing a time accused of what I was doing a time accused of for. You know what I mean? So it's just like worst of the worst in the eyes of the prison guard.
Okay, so when you're in jail, how are the guards towards you? Are they like trying to beat, what are their reactions towards you? Both of you guys.
We are considered the scum of the earth, the worst of the worst, and we're treated that way. There's, you might find one or two that have some humanity, but other ones, man, they're it's supposed to be Department of Corrections. We call it Department of Corruption. They're not there to, it's like they're there to babysit, as they say, and you have to follow the rules, and they treat you accordingly.
Yeah. So for me, yes, to that, right? The guards, they take a position where it's like they're above you, right? And when I say they're above you, it's not just in stature. It's mentally, it's emotionally, it's physically, it's in every level, right? It's like they're just better than you. It's like you're lesser than, right? So that's the disposition. Are there one-offs? Meaning, are there some SEALs that come and believe in the philosophy of correction and trying to get people right? yes, there's some that come, they do their job and go without thinking as though it's their job to punish. Um, there's that, but then there's some guys that come um, and feel as though it's their job to make our life harder, right? And so and they tend to be the one who has had less experience culturally with black and brown people, right? So they're in prison, able to act out their racist upbringing, if you will, right? Like they're able to be racially insensitive, culturally insensitive, and any other degree of insensitive as it comes to black and brown people because they haven't been raised around us, right? And then the system itself, right, praise on us so that they feel right at home with how they act towards us, right? But what does that do in the back end, right? What does that do to the person? So it has him start feeding on himself. It has me start feeding on myself. Like, am I lesser than? Am I not valued? Do I not have worth, right? And so as you're doing time, right, and you're in the Department of Corrections and they're beating you down, and then now when you come home more damaged than you was when you went in. Right? And so now when they speak about the recidivism and all that going up, right, why is that? Right?
There's a post-incarceration trauma that comes with brothers coming home. And for brothers that are wrongfully convicted, it's even harder. I used to have dudes come to me and be like, yo, I don't know how you do it. And I'd be like, what you mean? Like, yo, how is it that you remain how you remain knowing you didn't kill somebody? And that's the crazy part. When you go into the joint, man, there's people there that know you didn't do something. I had dudes come to me and be like, yo, we know you didn't kill our man. And I'm saying, well, damn, y'all know that. Why they don't know that? You know what I'm saying? But there's a different type of mentality. You go in there with this fight because you're innocent. You stand on that. But with each, like I was telling the sister, like with each motion that you file, and they deny you, it takes the fight out of most people. And there were times when it took the fight out of me, where it was like, yo, what's the sense? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're like, every time I go, it's something, you know. He had a Rosemary who was like, yo, something's wrong. I had a Florence Graves who was an investigative journalist who came in, believed in me, fought for me, and had 16 students, investigative journalist students, working on my case who discovered, you know what I'm saying? But without that, I'd still be sitting there, man.
So you think the motion process is broken?
It's definitely broken. So one of the things that I say, when you file your direct appeal, they're supposed to look at your case under Mass 27333E, which is a miscarriage of justice. The justices are supposed to look at that. And what they do is they say, okay, they look at that and they say there was no miscarriage of justice. Then they'll see an error. And they'll say, there's an error, but it was harmless. Then the last thing is, well, you had a fair trial. And they do that throughout the process of your appeals. So now you get a Sean Ellis who gets exonerated. You know, there's a Marshan who gets exonerated. And you say, so if they're exonerated, there was a miscarriage of justice, which you said there wasn't. The error was harmful, which you said was harmless. And he didn't get a fair trial, which you said he did. So the ball got dropped. Where? You understand what I'm saying? Yep. The ball got dropped when you're supposed to look at this for miscarriage of justice. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, like, so before you got a Florence Gray, and before I got a Rosemary,
We banged on them. We banged on them. But there was, my first 6 years, I was in the law library every day, not knowing nothing about the law, man. I didn't know. I would read a case and say, denied. I'd be like, okay, put that away. Because if it got denied, it ain't going to help me. So I wouldn't even read it. And it took me years to understand. Like, I wrote my first Rule 30 motion myself. I look back at it now, and I'm like, well, what the hell was that? All you did was quoted law and said, you quoted law. There was no structure to it, and and I'm like, yo, this is. But learning the law, man, it's like Chinese arithmetic, man. It's not constant reading, constant trying to understand something, and then you get brothers who can't read or write. And you have lawyers who have caseloads so heavy that they're not even, you know what I'm saying, they're not helping.
Especially if they're corner playing.
Yeah, they're not helping.
How did your lawyers, did you guys find your lawyers, or did they find you?
yeah. So I started studying the law in 1993 at National Street, and I continued on. So I went into National Street not knowing the law. I came home from National Street with an envelope with legal work in it, right? Because like part of that was a self-teaching process, but then there was other individuals in prison that had more knowledge, and so you latch on and then you learn the law. And in the process of that, I came to realize that I needed to part ways with my appeal attorneys, and so I was in limbo for about a year and a half or 2 years in terms of who I wanted to try to get to represent me going forward. And I was looking at two different attorneys. I was looking at Stephen Rones, and then I was looking at Rosemary Scapicio, the lawyer that I ended up getting. And just there was something about Rosemary Scapicio when I would see her on the news, when I would read about her. She kind of fit well with what I needed, what I felt I needed, and what I wanted. And what I felt I needed and wanted was an attorney that would listen to what I had to say. An attorney that would believe in me and wasn't just a case file. So I think that was the biggest difference. I don't know.
So what made you leave your first two appeal attorneys, and then when you're doing this, what's your thought process as far as like monetary wise money? So because I could defeat somebody from the beginning, like dang, I can learn law library, I can do this, give her this attorney, but do I have the money to, is there different programs? Like I explain.
Yeah. So I was first represented by Norman Zelkine and David Duncan. They took me to 3 trials. They took me through 3 trials when the Commonwealth was withholding evidence, key evidence, withholding the evidence that ultimately led to my exoneration, right?
Also, this Commonwealth of Massachusetts was holding.
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts was withholding exculpatory evidence, right?
For that whole time.
That I asked for in 1993, that they had as early as, that I asked for in 94, right? But that they had as early as 93, and they withheld that. And so when I did my direct appeal, and then the state's highest court, the SJC, denied my direct appeal, I went back through the brief that I filed. I went back through, did their decision, and I felt as though we needed to go deeper into the evidence that was withheld from us, right? And I wasn't able to do it with them by law, so I had to get another attorney to one look and see if they did anything wrong in their representation of me, right? And we found that they didn't do anything wrong. And so at that point, once we realized that they didn't do anything wrong, then the person that was culpable was the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So
how does that process work? How could the Commonwealth of Massachusetts withhold evidence if it's asked by your lawyers? Like, is that like?
That's a great question.
You said how?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, like.
No, that's.
Yeah. So that's what's broken. Yeah. So that's what's. Right?
How? Like this.
Yeah.
So they have this thing called Mass General Laws, Chapter 66, Section 10, which allows you to get information, freedom of information.
Yep.
And this is one of the things you learn in learning the law, that you can request the police's whole file on your case. I requested the police's file. They sent it to me. I had to pay for it, but they sent it to me. There were things in there, some of the same stuff that I had seen. I waited months later, did another request. This time the request came in, there was a document in there that I never seen that described something else that night. Never seen it. I also did that same request to the DA's office. They said, we can't find your file. For 10 years, they couldn't find my file. When the ball started to get to roll and, Rachel Rollins went in as a district attorney and opened up the Integrity Review Bureau, and we were able to file through that bureau, they were still saying they couldn't find my file. And I said to my lawyer, I bet you when we file this Rule 30, they're going to find the file. And I remember us filing the Rule 30 and going into court to argue. The person who was the ADA who was fighting against me went in court and said, well, Your Honor, we looked in the archives and we found a file in the archives. My lawyer immediately said, hold up, time out. We've been asking for a file for 10 years that they said they never had. We need that. We got to look at that file, man, and there was stuff in there that so yeah, they can say it got lost. They can take papers out and what happens is, because I'm gonna say regime changes over the years, maybe the DAs who were holding stuff or not putting stuff in there or keeping stuff out, another one comes in who doesn't know, and they put it, when they do the file, they put it in there because they don't know they're supposed to withhold it. They don't know that was withheld. They don't know that that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
No.
And most times that's how you get that information, from someone else.
With your case, I know that it was dropped 3 weeks before Rachel Rollins went in. What about your case?
Yeah.
Was it after or before?
It was after.
It was after.
I was one of the last cases that went before, I believe, the Integrity Review Bureau before she went to become state's attorney. And when they responded, it was her response was, under this administration, this wouldn't have happened. There seems to have been a miscarriage of justice, so there was a miscarriage of justice. So,
for both of you guys, do you feel if she wasn't in that position, or she wasn't going to get appointed DA, that you guys would have still been sitting like? I'm going to say unequivocally, I'd still be sitting in MCI Norfolk.
So with me, it was like a little economy. You first asked, like, how did it happen with withholding evidence, right? In each case is a little bit different on its face. Because in my case, there was a deliberate withholding, right? We asked for this stuff. We asked specifically for this stuff. And the law says that when you ask specifically for this stuff, right, the Commonwealth has to give it over to you.
Is there a time? Like they have to? Is it?
Not necessarily a certain time frame, but they have to give it to you before you go to trial, right? In Massachusetts, as we are in, they have what's called Rule 14. Even before you get to 6610, which is public information, you have the rule of court, Rule 14. And the Rule 14 says that you're entitled to exculpatory evidence, right? That entitlement, you become even more entitled, right? So if you want to put race into it, right? So if you're white, you have an entitlement, right? But the whiter you are, the more entitled you are, right? So Rule 14 says that when you ask for it specifically, you reach within the more entitled bracket because you put them on notice with what you want specifically. In 1994, I specifically asked for any information, right, that the Commonwealth has in its possession that shows or tends to show that Mulligan, Brazel, Acera, Robertson, and or Marquette was involved in any other wrongdoing, in any other investigation. And what did the Commonwealth say? They said that me and my attorneys were on a fishing expedition. They said that in 1994. They said that in 1994. Okay? We went fishing in 2010 when we finally got a judge to order them to turn over the evidence. And all kind of fish started coming out of the water. All kind of reports started coming out of the water. So we wasn't blind fishing. We knew something was there, right? But the Commonwealth acted outside of the bounds of what their responsibility is. And the judge, here you go, the judicial misconduct. The judge did not go by the rules of court and allowed them to withhold the evidence. So it wasn't just the police in my case. It wasn't just the Commonwealth in my case. It was the Judge Jane McDaniels in my case too that allowed them to do what they were doing, what they did. And so now,
very different situations,
right? And so to fast forward, you asked about counsel, right? What was that question again?
Rachel Rollins.
All right, peace. So, my case was ended before Rachel Rollins came into office. So it was part of that old regime, the Dan Carlin type regime, right? The Ralph Martin type regime, right? Who was strong, like back the blue. And it ain't about like getting along police. Police got to do their job, right? But you can't. How you gonna back corrupt cops? I don't give a damn who you are, right? If you are an administrator of justice, how are you going to back the wrongdoing, right, of the police? It's an affront to the criminal legal system. If you have corrupt cops, you ain't never going to get to the truth, right? So they was forced to do away with the case, right? One, because I had great counsel. Two, because I was unrelenting. And three, because they knew that Rachel was coming, right? And if Rachel came, the first thing what they did, right? If you go and look, watch Trial 4 on Netflix, is the first press conference. They said, we're dropping the murder and the armed robbery because the witnesses' memories are fogged and all that stuff, right? But they knew, my judgment, had Rachel came, there was going to be a complete overview, and she wouldn't have just piecemealed the exoneration. She would have exonerated me all at one time of the murder, the armed robbery, and possession of firearms, right? We didn't get to the exoneration of the firearms until after she came into office, until after she said, well, listen, we're going to look at this whole thing, and then at that point, the last charge was dropped.
Because then that exposes the whole regime and all that, and they don't want to do that because they all have a pact together, you know.
There is a law that says if a witness is paid money, right, that the defendant has a right to know. There was at least 3 witnesses in my case that was paid. One of them $9,000. You paid $9,000 for your testimony.
It is today.
There's people that don't make that in a year. There was people back then that didn't make that in a year.
But they didn't tell us. The law says I have a right to know prior to trial, because if I'm on trial, right, does that not weigh into how a jury perceives you and receives you? Are you credible? Do you have motive to lie? Like that's all relevant towards that, right? But if you don't tell me, so I can inform the jury, yeah, the police, the Congo paid this person for the testimony, then the jury can't weigh, balance, and measure the credibility thereof. But this is our criminal legal system, right?
Nothing that's broke. It's broken.
It's or the operating as intended, because now you get into the historical piece of it, right? And where it came from.
So how did you guys meet? Where did you guys meet?
I always say that's your story to tell.
It's my story to tell. Maybe because I was mostly impacted by it.
So while in Atlanta, I had heard about the homicide of Mulligan. Never really seeing like the news of it, and you know.
Well, so before you go, so y'all both caught cases around the same time?
Yeah.
Y'all was like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, because your case happened before.
But
Yours is okay.
yeah, but like when I found out about it was at a time when I was in Atlanta watching, like, oh shit, look what happened in Massachusetts. You know, it wasn't like shown on the news, but I had heard about it on the
What years
news.
is this again? For the people to know. What years was this?
This was '93. And I remember coming. This is one of the things I say to Sean all the time. Sean, for one, and this is where I think God's hand comes into play. I shouldn't have been arraigned at West Roxbury Court because the homicide happened in Roxbury, in Mission Hill. So I should have been at Roxbury Court, but they brought me to West Roxbury Court. And I remember, going into the holding cell, seeing him, sitting there, like with a small shirt on. At that time he wasn't he was about this big, and he was cold, and I'm like, not knowing who he is, but like, my man here, put this sweater on. Not realizing like who he was, but seeing someone that's cold and like, yo, here, man, like, you know what I'm saying? I'll let him pick it up from there.
Yes. So I was arrested coming from my cousin's funeral. I was at my aunt's house, and then the next thing that I know is my mom was preparing a plate of food for me at the repast, and then someone else came and said the police said they had the house surrounded and to come out. So, like, I'm grieving my cousin's death. You know what I mean? So I'm like, whatever. It's like, so I end up going out and getting arrested. And I was arrested in Dorchester at my aunt's house. I believe I should have went to the local station in Dorchester, right? And then taken from there to homicide, and then from homicide to county jail. They took me from Dorchester to West Roxbury, where there was a officer that was placed in front of the cell, and the biggest thing that I remember that night is like he played the taps on the bars all night. Like just all night, and I went to court the next day, and I think that's when you gave me the sweater. But my family had brought clothes to West Roxbury jail for me, but the police didn't give them to me, right? It's like I was accused of killing one of their own, so it's like I was the worst of the worst, you're not getting nothing. And so by the time I got to West Roxbury Court, it's like I was freezing. You know what I'm saying? They had the AC on in the holding cell, like, and I remember trying to put my arms and my t-shirt and the button up that I had on. You know what I'm saying? Just to try to stay warm, right? But Steve, when he seen me in the holding cell the next day at court, like I didn't know this dude from a hole in the wall. Like I didn't know him at all. We was from two different neighborhoods. But he took the shirt off his back and he gave it to me. And for me, that kind of cemented me in his relationship. Because I went to trial, I got a mistrial, meaning the jury wasn't able to agree on the verdict. Then he went to trial, he got a mistrial. Then back to trial. I went to trial, another mistrial. He went to trial, he got convicted, and then the next time we met, we was up state. We met again at Walpole. But I remember that this is the brother that gave the shirt to me.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, like there's a loyalty there.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we're in a different environment, right? But this is the brother that gave a shirt to me. Mm-hmm. So no matter what, like I got his back. Mm-hmm. Because he gave a shirt to me at the time when I needed clothes because I was freezing. So
and that was the start of a wonderful friendship, brotherhood, that later, there was some distance.
Yeah.
And we dealt with that, came back together, and I remember, like years later, man, we were in the yard together, and I said, yo, man, like, this is not only my friend and my comrade, but this is my brother. So I developed a handshake that we had, and we do it, and this is it. You lock that, and I say, yo, bro, this is the chain that is unbreakable. And people would think it was a gang thing, but I would tell them, nah, this is a chain link, man. Chain links can't break that. That's been our handshake from that time on to now. And I only have that handshake with two other people, my cousin Droop and my son. So it's this is my brother, and he I learned law from him because, for some reason, man, his brain works in a way that mine doesn't, when it comes to learning law. And he was always in the law library, and, I was in there, but some of the stuff I was reading, I didn't understand. I remember one time I had this attorney, and when you're innocent and you're reading your case and you learn, and this is the thing, things don't sound right. And they bother you, they hear, and you can't sleep because and there was an issue, and I kept bringing it up to this attorney, and she kept saying to me, well, how is that material? And I'd be like, listen, man, I don't know how it's material. I don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. The shit don't sound right. Mm-hmm. It's been plaguing me for years. It don't sound right. It's your job to figure it out. And I went to him, I said, yo, man, this woman keep telling me, man, the material, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, so how's it material? I said, bro, what you mean? He's like, you don't know what that means? I'm like, nah. And he started to explain it to me. And I said, hold on, bro, stop. Explain this shit to me like I'm a 4-year-old, because I'm not understanding what you say. And that's what he did. He took the time, the patience. And he's had patience with me then as he does now. And he showed me, taught me how to apply the materiality. So now when I spoke to the attorney, or the lawyer at that time, because there is a difference. The lawyer represents the status quo, the attorney represents you. It goes hard for you. Now when I was able to explain it to the lawyer, I could show her how this was material. So that was like one of the many things, but that's the one that stands out when it comes to the law library with him. Like, you know what I'm saying?
When I was dealing with the law, like I had to have like a thorough knowledge, like a thorough grasping of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because what they was doing to me was exceptional. Like what they was doing to me was beyond what they typically do to people that's caught up in the system. Yeah. Like they was breaking laws, they was breaking rules, like So I had to really understand it. And that's the way that I was able to explain it to him, like as simplistic as I was able to explain it, because I had to grasp it in that way. I remember standing up in the cell when I was at Susan Baranowski Correctional Center, SBCC, and I was in the cell and I had the whole mattress covered with legal work. And I was trying to figure out, like, what the hell did they do to me, man? Like how the hell did this happen? And it really took me understanding the law in the most simplistic way to begin to build from there.
Learn that law library. That's how you force that win.
You
have to force the win. You got to beat
the
that
only
law.
way you're gonna force that win is in that law library.
At least they give you the law library up in there.
And it was one that I remember when I was first learning, this older guy, because back then they didn't have a computer, and he took me, he said, "Yo, what do you see on these books, on the binder?" And I'm like, "What you mean?" He's like, "What do you see on every one of these books?" And I was like, I'm looking, I'm like, I don't see. And he pointed, he said, "That's a key. There's a key on every single law book." He said, "That's the key to you going home."
It's a shepherd's book. The keys is on the shepherd's book.
You understand? And those books are the key, but you have to know. And this is one of the things that we, once I learned the law or learned things about my case and learned about eyewitness identification, learned about DNA evidence, learned about confluence of factors and all of those things and how one law applies and you know what I'm saying? And you try to pass that on to the next guy. But it was those were the keys. You know what I'm saying? Knowing that. And if you know your case and you, like my attorney, I remember one time he was going on vacation and he said, "Steve, I got a rough draft of your Rule 30. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to go on vacation. I'll be on vacation for 3 weeks." I said, "Send me the rough draft." He sent it to me. It was rough like a mother. But what I did is I rewrote that Rule 30. So everything he had was in black. Everything I added, case law and everything, was in red. And I wrote it in a way where my mom is going to see this. I need my mother to understand it. So when I went into the aspect of third-party culprit, where you have to show intent, opportunity, and motive, I had to break that down. Like, I'm arguing third party. Here's the opportunity. Here's the intent. Here's the motive. This applies in my case this particular way, so that when my mother read it, she could understand it. I said, if my mother understands it, then my lawyer's going to understand it. My attorney's going to understand it. And I remember it was 32 pages written, and I sent it to him. And what was inspiring to me is I had an attorney that valued my opinion. And I think that me doing that let him know he ain't gonna just let me represent him any kind of way.
I got to really,
you understand what I'm saying?
I got to really go in for this guy.
Right, and I think that solidified our relationship. And he knew that he just wasn't gonna tell me anything, and I wasn't gonna research it. And one of the things about us guys that learn law inside is we look at it differently than attorneys do. See, when they go to school to learn law, there's a format. There's a way that the professor teaches law. We don't look at that format. We're looking outside the box. We have to. We have to look for the shit that you ain't looking for. So now when your lawyer sees or your attorney sees that you're thinking outside the box and you're pressing him or her to look outside the box, and they start to do that, then they start to say, I remember him telling me about a case, Turner versus United States, and he said, yeah, it helps, but I don't think we can use it. I was like, let me get the. Went back, I read the case, and I said, okay, I see. But then there's dissenting language, which is the opinion of other judges who disagree with the judges, the majority. I'm reading this language, and I'm saying, and I didn't know. I learned later that dissenting you can use as well. So I seen something, I was like, oh, called him. Hey, did you see the dissenting opinion from Judge such and such? He said, no, I didn't look at. Yeah, check that out. That apply. And he looked, and I think even though I did the Rule 30, I think when I did that, he was like, yeah. and he ended up using that. He used a lot of the case law that I had applied, which was for me like, damn, I had part in this, man. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was cool. That was cool.
It's amazing what we can do when you play in that corner. When you
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I bounced a lot of things off the side. I remember when I was putting the motion together. So there's a certain way that all attorneys write their motions.
This is how we forced to win here.
No, really. So there was DNA testing. Came back, excluded me from the person's jacket and the gun. And for me, that needs to be. And when I said it to that needs to go. He was like, well, and I said the side. I'm like, yo, man. I remember you was home, and I'm like, yo, how do I? And he's like, well, you do realize that you have to convince the reader. Who's the reader? I said, the judge. He said, we got to put something that's going to convince him. So he said, what stands out the most to you? I was like, the DNA. He said, then that needs to go first. So when I told my attorney, I said, listen, man, I want the DNA mentioned first. He's like, yeah, but that's not how. Yeah, I know how you do it. But instead of going into the procedure and the history, I want the judge, as soon as he look at this motion, to know that there was DNA evidence that excluded me. That's the first thing I want him to see. And he's like, yeah, Steve. But I was like, listen, man, me and Cy talked about this. Call Cy. And I had Cy call him because Cy was able to express it to him in a way that, because I'm into the emotion part of it because it's my case. He was able to articulate it in the same way but different. And that's what went first. When the judge looked at that motion, first thing he read was DNA science, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Then he went into the history. But that's the first thing he saw. DNA excluded me. You understand what I'm saying? So that when the Commonwealth did say, well, Your Honor, the DNA, he said, we ain't got to talk about the DNA. We ain't got to even address that because I already seen it.
And it's like, there's a thing with the law about finality. That when the jury decides a verdict, like, that should be it. When the jury decides a verdict, that should be it, right? Never mind anything else. And so when you have a direct appeal and it's denied, right, you have a hurdle you got to overcome. The hurdle's finality, because the jury didn't reach the verdict and the court that said, nah, like, you're all set. And it's kind of like having to prove your innocence all over again. So you put the strongest thing to prove your innocence, right, to make it possible. I'm going to say that again. You put the strongest thing first to prove your innocence, to make it possible to even believe that you're innocent in prison. Because people tend not to believe that there are innocent people in prison. And that's the undergird of why I said, nah, that has to go first. Right? Because I went through already, like, I came home before he did. And it's like, like the judge gotta believe, she or he have to see, read, believe, like, see something to make them believe in your innocence, right? And then after that, then you can kind of support your innocence, right? But don't go in saying, well, yeah, this is wrong, but I'm also innocent. No. If you're innocent, then you're innocent, man. Like, present your innocence and then support your innocence. And that's really was at the heart of what it was that I was talking to him about, and that's really what it was at the heart of what I was talking to his attorney about when his attorney and I spoke, man. Because these are lives. Like, this is a life. Stephen Pina is a person He has a mother, he has a father, he has a son, right? Just like he has a life. Like me, Sean Ellis, I have a mother, I have a father, I have siblings. Like I'm a person. So what you did to me, you didn't just do it to me.
You did
like,
it to
like there's ripple effects. You know what I mean? And so, well,
I mean, you guys went in forcing the win from the beginning. The fact that you guys sat and you guys learned the law, you guys came out, you guys are advocates, you guys are spoken voices for these people now. Because I feel not too many people when they do get accused of something that they go in and they're willing to learn the law. They just sit there and they just take it. They expect their attorney to do everything, their lawyer or whatever, to do for them. And you guys went in and took the time and made sure you guys well knowledge yourself on those.
And it's one of them things where I say to dudes, man, people go home from Norfolk, MCI Norfolk. People go home from Norfolk. And when Cy went home, I was already in my law library thing. But when Cy went home, it sparked a lot of guys to start going to the law library. Mm-hmm. When I went home, it sparked a lot of guys. Because guys woke up the next morning. I went to court on March 9th, 2022. In the shower that morning, this was during COVID time, and we were doing Zooms, and I remember them canceling the Zoom. My lawyer said, well, the judge wants to see you in court, wants to bring you in. And I'm like, for what? I don't want to go. He was like, yeah, well, you going. And I remember, he was like, this could be good. And I'm like, yeah, I'm already kind of defeated. Like, yeah, man, hey. And I remember calling a few friends saying, yo, man, I'm going to court, blah, blah, blah. But I remember being in the shower that morning. Usually when you go to court, you put on your visiting clothes. That morning, I threw on my prison clothes, my boots, my prison shirt, my prison jeans, and I was in, and I'm like, yeah, I'll be back here tonight, man. Eating chow with dudes. It'll be late, and they brought me to court. And March 9th, 2022. Is when I was released, and guys woke up the next morning. I wasn't there. It was already spread around the camp that Steve went home. My understanding is the next day there were dudes in the law library that hadn't been going to the law library. Because when you see somebody going that hard, when you see somebody waking up in the morning and going at movement at 8:30 to the library to 11, and then coming again at 12:30 or 1:30, going to the law library till 4:35, and then you see him wake up. You see him come out at 5:36 and go to the law library till 8:30. Doing that every day to the point when the CO would see my legal briefcase, he would say, you going to work? Yep. So for dudes to see that consistently for months, and then at a time when everything that I could have done, or I believed I could have done, had been done, had the team behind me. So to see me go home, a lot of dudes the next day were in that law library. Because they seen the hard work. Dudes go home from Norfolk.
I remember this brother telling me that he felt sorry for me. I was arrested in 1993. I started learning the law in 1993, and was consistent all the way through. Steve would tell you. Mm-hmm. There was never extended period of time when I wasn't in that law library, you know what I'm saying? But the brother said he felt sorry for me because he seen me going to the law library. And he believed that they was never going to let me out, that I was never going to get out. So he said, man, they call me Cy after a certain point in there because I started to improve all my thinking. Mm-hmm. He said, Cy, man, I used to feel sorry for you. And I asked him why. He said, 'cause I used to see you going to the library, man, and I thought you was going for nothing. And so um, I understood it. I didn't take offense to it. I didn't take it personal, right?
Yeah.
Because remember what I said. Nobody wanted this case. Nobody did. This was the case. Wasn't no one coming from it. Like you're all set. Innocent, guilty. You're all set. And he wasn't the only one. Well, man.
And
93, 94, I had just got at Walpole. I had just been convicted. And there was an older brother there that was doing legal work. And I remember this brother telling me, he said, man, they ain't never gonna let you out of here. I was 21, no older than 22. He said, man, they ain't never gonna let you out of here. I said, why you say that? He said, man, what they invested to get you here. They took you to trial 3 times. All that money they spent, they ain't letting you out of here. And that was one of the first messages that I got, man, from the prison population when I got up there. And then so that was then about a decade or so later, when my direct appeal got denied. And the direct appeal is like when you go to trial and you lose, and it's a murder case, a first degree murder case, you automatically get a direct appeal. So when my direct appeal got denied, I remember asking someone, hey, can you read my decision and tell me if I got a shot? And he read the decision and he came back and said, man, quote unquote, they slammed you. He said, man, they didn't leave no way for you to get out of here. And I was like, yeah. I'm having to process this. And I'm making the connection between what he's saying and what the first guy said. Yeah. It get that real. Because it's my life and freedom. This is my free life. My ability to make a decision, my ability to go to the corner store, my ability to provide, take care of my mother, my ability to be a brother. Like, this is my life. And with a book and some words, they took it. And then I have people telling me that this reality is never going to change for me.
I got tunnel vision.
You
know what?
It's
you gotta force the win. You gotta
again, my brother.
Listen, bro.
That's the buzzer.
You gotta force the win, because if you don't force it, if you take that as is,
you can't take nothing.
It's like me and my wife, like, there's this thing like wounded but not broken. Like, yeah, like, you might have wounded me with them things that you said to me. And I know they was trying to break me, but I ain't end up broken. I'm wounded, but I'm not broken. I went into a phase of never not working, right? To prove my innocence. You know what I'm saying?
And see, I had the opposite reaction. Because, like I said, going in, people already knew. There was talk, yo, he innocent. Dudes would be telling other dudes, yo, he innocent. So when they would see me, I didn't get that, yo, you ain't never going home. Dudes would always be like, yo, he innocent, man. It's fucked up that you here. So I would get a different type of encouragement. My discouragement came from the court. See, he could have been discouraged when they said, oh, you ain't never going home. But what happens is we call each other innocents. When you talk to somebody and you see the work they do, you know they're innocent because the work they're putting in. And you gravitate to those people. And y'all bounce things off of each other.
So you guys both come home, you guys start programs up. What is your program about and what is your program about?
So I came home and I continued to advocate for Steve and Steve's innocence, and he ended up coming home. I co-founded this this program called the Exonery Network. When I came home, I didn't have no resources. There was nothing for me when I came home. Not even someone to talk to that can relate. Like
Yeah.
I didn't.
So
I didn't know.
what kind of resources would you need when you come home like this?
Food, clothes, shelter, someone to talk to, medical kids, like just
threw you back out.
just literally, like, all right, listen, no sorry, just get out of here. And so I went through a transition, having to rely on family and friends to try to help put my life together. And I ended up realizing that well, what about the people who are coming home that don't have nobody, that don't have nothing, that just is being put out there and allowed to just fall. So me and two other exonerees, Victor Rosario and Ray Champagne, started having conversations about what we experienced coming home, and we all experienced a different variation of the same thing, but there were similarities that ran through it all. And as a result of those common conversations and relationships that we built, we ended up establishing a program within the New England Innocent Project called the Exonery Network. And what we do is provide like services for people coming home, practical support, mental and emotional support, spiritual support, technological support, financial support, and a host of other supports. You can find us at www.knowingtheinnocence.org. Just type in Exonery Network. You want to talk about
Well, I don't have an organization per se.
but you got a movement.
I got, and I tell people NMW is not just a brand, it's a movement. And I say that because, as I was telling the sister, that wrongful conviction is real. So when I came home, I had picked up this mantra of never not working from my brother, Fu Kwong. He inspired that. And I told him, I said, when I go home, bro, I'm going to be talking about never not working. So I came home, and my mission, my movement was to let people know about wrongful conviction, that it existed. And I wanted to do it through what I was wearing. So my first shirt said hashtag never not working on the front. And on the back it said hashtag other side of the wall. And I wanted people, when they seen it, what's the hashtag never not working, which allowed me the opportunity to say that's what it took for me to come home from prison after doing 28 years. And people would go, oh my God, I was sentenced to life. And it opened a discussion. And I found that people did not believe that wrongful conviction existed or that it was isolated. And I remember talking to a few people who had read Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy. And they said when they were reading it, they were shaking their head like, this can't be true. This can't be happening. This is. But my thing was, nah, it is true. You're standing in front of somebody who's telling you they did 28 years on a wrongful conviction, who was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And then I came up with, I remember I started noticing that a lot of my friends who had done time and got out were either had nonprofits. My brother here had the Exonery Network. Other brothers had businesses. One of my friends had a tow truck company. One of my friends had a sites and utilities company and a car wash. And I'm like, I said, y'all bounce back. So that's where we bounce back, because don't count us out because we did time, which society does. You got a Corey, you ain't no good. We bounce back. And then my lady at the time said to me, well, it ain't just about incarceration. I'm like, what you mean? Yes, it is. Other side of the wall of prison, never not working, what it took to get out. She said, well, there's people behind the wall of addiction, homelessness, depression, sexual assault, and just trauma in general. So it became, okay, if you've been on the other side of the wall of that side of the wall and you've overcome that, now you're on your bounce back. So that's where, in the Bird, the New England Innocence Project, man, their color is blue. The Exoneree Network, their color is blue. So this dove represents, to me, the Exoneree Network, New England Innocence Project, blue for freedom, blue for the sky, freedom, the bird, freedom, and that's what it was about, So I started doing hoodies, and even though this is the Exoneree Network, anytime I put on somebody's thing, I put this on there because to me, the Exoneree Network is never not working to make sure that Exonerees come home and they have something. Because why? We've all gotten on the other side of the wall and we're bouncing back. So that, I started selling hoodies and T-shirts and, hats. And then I decided, well, two things I wanted when I came home. Credit, because my credit was terrible before I locked up. And I wanted to own a business. My credit score got up to 741. And then I, did the LLC and I've taken entrepreneur classes, and I realized in those classes that I was lost. And I remember telling the professor, like, listen, man, that structure of business, I don't understand that. I'm a hustler. You understand? I'm a hustler. I know how to move product. I know how to, sell out the trunk. And that's how I started selling my hoodies and T-shirts and hats out the trunk of the car and through, Instagram and Facebook. So, if anybody wants to follow, it's, Facebook is Stephen Pina Sr. Instagram page is Pina SR.S. And then I have an Instagram page, other_side of the wall. And that's how you can follow those and see the movement that I'm trying to do. DM me if you want a hat, T-shirt, and every time my hashtag is other side of the wall, wounded but not broken, never not working, and we bounce back. So, that's what my movement is about, making sure that people understand that wrongful conviction exists and that it is an epidemic. And because it doesn't affect white America as it does us black and brown people, they don't see it as an epidemic. But it is. Because if whites were wrongfully convicted at the rate that we are,
oh man.
Like I was telling this, listen, heroin been in my community since all I can remember. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Where it was you got caught with heroin, you was shooting up, you went to jail. Mm-hmm. Once it started going out to the suburbs, the name got changed. Opioids. It became a mental health crisis. And now you come home and there's people down the Mass and Cass shooting needles. The police is right there, and I'm like, yo, like what's going on? And I want people to understand that this is the same thing with wrongful conviction. There's a mental health issue with that. How you gonna put a dude in prison for 22 years? 28 years, some brothers 32 years, some brothers 42 years, one guy we got 52 years, and say that there's no trauma behind that. There's not a mental health thing.
Even before that, right? It's an epidemic. It speaks of public safety. You're locking up the wrong folk. The person that committed the crime is still running the street, able to perpetuate crime, right? You're locking up the wrong folk. So the mental health issues, right, that becomes a public health issue, right, attaches to it. So it's definitely an epidemic that nobody's talking about. But before we close out, two other things that the Exoneree Network does is because we focus on re-entry, but we also focus on policy work. We work to change policies and laws that affect wrongful convictions, and then we work with lawyers that go into court post direct appeal, post habeas corpus, to try to overturn these wrongful convictions as well. But if you want to follow us on social media, that is Exemplary Network across all platforms. You can also follow me personally at I am Sean K. Ellis too.
How long can I just gotta say this. So I wanna send a shout out to Yard Time Incorporated, which is a men's group that also deals with post-incarceration trauma and mental health. But last night, I slept in my living room in my apartment. And this is part of me never not working to get back to a normalcy, but my bedroom door slides closed. I can't sleep with that door open. And I realized, like, when I moved into the apartment, I closed the door, and I'm like, yo, bro, you still in the cell. I can't sleep with it. If it's cracked, I got to get up and close it. But last night, I didn't want to go in the closed room. I didn't want to be, like, feeling like I was in the cell. So I slept on my couch in the living room. My window goes from floor to ceiling. I slept there, and I slept good, because I felt I wasn't in the cell. And that's part of
The mental situation.
that mental health,
that
yeah, bro. But it was, I just had to shoot that out there because I really want people to understand the trauma that comes from being incarcerated, especially when you're incarcerated wrongly.
So we always end out the show on two last questions. Mental health, you guys brought that up a couple of times. Mental health is really big to me. So what do you do on a daily basis to cope with your mental health? Like, how do you go about your daily, life after all that?
I can't tell you what I do because I'm still trying to understand it. I'm still understanding what it's like to be free. I'm still learning what that is. I'm still learning how to be in a relationship. So it's a constant battle, and sometimes I don't know what to do about my mental. I call Cy, me and him build, and like I tell him, I don't know. Like, he asked me the other day, what are you feeling? And I just went into a slew of things. Like, it's I don't know what to do. I know that me going to Yard Time and talking to other brothers who have been in prison, and then talking to brothers who have understand what it's like to be incarcerated wrongfully and how they cope without, out here. He presses me all the time to do other things, but I'm stuck.
Yeah, me, first I just want to acknowledge Stacy Borden, the New Beginners Reentry Services, TPP, and Justice for Housing for the work that they're doing for people suffering from long-term incarceration and wrongful convictions. So, but mental health. First, I thank my wife for being a supporter of my mental health journey. It's something that she's very intentional about, and thus we and I am very intentional about. I have somebody that I speak to from the professional healthcare system But then there's also other holistic healing modalities that I utilize to try to address the traumas and the emotional um, um, trauma that I've been through. So those are like three different things that I'm actively involved in to try to reverse what was done as a result of the wrongful incarceration and just the experience with the prison, the criminal legal system, right? Because it's important to know that the trauma that you experience going through the system itself, right, is traumatic. It's only exacerbated or heightened, right, when you're going through it and you're innocent of the crime which they accuse you of. So it's a traumatic experience for everybody that encounters it.
Well, y'all been telling me about forcing to win this whole,
The whole episode.
that's my question. I always ask, what do you do to force to win on a daily basis? And me was put in a certain position, you had to overcome an obstacle. What did you do? You guys basically explain that this whole interview, this whole conversation.
Never not working,
So,
man. Like,
my question is, somebody who was in your position that's in your position now, that's locked up and they feel like they're wrongfully convicted, what's some steps they can take to force to win to get up out of there? We already know the law library, but now you guys are out here. There's different programs, there's different situations going on. What advice would you give somebody? Where should they start? What path should they take? What number should they call? Where they go on the internet to do? What?
So the first thing that I did to force to win, real talk, was to work on myself. And he'll tell you that because there was no way that I was going to comprehend what I needed to comprehend with the self judgments about my intellectual capabilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was no way that I was going to level up if I didn't look at myself first. I had to look at myself first, right? And figure that out. But that's a whole other conversation too.
Yeah.
I would, tell them, agreeing with what he said. But, write those letters, right? Find out what organizations, New England Innocence Project, CPCS Innocence Project, program, BC Innocence Project. Write these organizations, write as many people as you can, and stay the course, and I'm always going to say it, never not working, man. You have to, that has to be your mantra, your that you have to stand on that.
You have to live that.
You have to, man. Like, learn the law. Know what you're talking about you ain't got to learn about nobody else's case. Learn about your case. Do the work. There's gonna be discouragement.
Do the work.
But we are proof. Both of us wounded, but we're not broken. And when you're not broken, man, you able to stand and be and put the work in.
Put it back together.
You have to be willing, being in the cell with all the legal work on your bed at 2, 3 in the morning when it's quiet. You got to do that work. Because you look at us and you can't give up. Even when it looks grim and it looks like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You got, 50 years between the two of us?
22,
28, yeah. 50 years of wrongful conviction. Who's now on the other side of the wall. So it's possible. I'm looking at these cameras, yo. If you got a loved one that's in there who is saying they innocent, you tell them they got to keep going. Don't give up. It's possible. It's possible.
See you right here.
22 and 6. It's possible.
So it's definitely possible. And I say apply that to anything in life that you want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Definitely
it's
apply to
possible.
anyone.
You know what I'm saying? Just focus, lock down, tunnel vision, understand what's going on, and put in that work. Find that information, do the reading, put the time in.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
You have
Be
nothing but
patient.
time.
Mhm.
Get over them hurdles. Get over them people, them naysayers. Like you, especially what you got to get over. People telling you, "Oh, it's dark."
Invest in yourself.
Yeah.
You gotta invest and believe in yourself. If you don't invest and believe in yourself, when it's time for you to count on yourself, you ain't gonna have nobody.
Say that. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys for sitting down with us.
Yes, yes, yes.
Definitely appreciate all the conversation. We definitely got to get a part 2 again.
Mhm.
I praise you guys. I commend you guys.
You guys gave me more motivation to get, you know
For
what I'm saying,
real,
to
for
get
real,
things.
for
There
real.
ain't no excuses, man. You know what I'm saying?
No
Y'all made it from
excuses at
y'all
all.
was really at the bottom.
At the bottom.
They tried to
for
bury you
real.
under the jail.
For
You feel
real.
what I'm saying?
For real.
Right.
And you guys made it out.
Keep doing what you guys are
You know what I
doing.
mean?
Salute.
Shout out to everybody, man. Shout out to my
Salute.
guys
Everybody.
behind that camera. Shout out to Miss Sheep, Jackie. You know what I'm saying? They're the ones that hooked us up to even get with you guys.
Right,
You know what I'm
right,
saying?
right,
Shout out to
right.
them. Shout out to this wonderful office. I love what you guys are doing here.
Shout out to
You know what I'm
Stacey
saying?
Borden
Yeah.
and
Forced to win.
Force the Win.
Force to win. It's a lifestyle. Embody it. Don't play around with it. No excuses. Force it.
No excuses.
You know what I mean? And we out of here.